Okay. Oh, hold on. Okay. All right. I think I've got it all under control on my screen here. Vanessa,
Perfect.
it is so great to meet you. Thank you for this, for doing this and being willing to share your story.
Oh,
And
thank you. Hey, what part of Idaho are you in?
we are in Caldwell. Do you know where Caldwell
Okay.
is? Meridian area.
Yes, yes. So I lived in Idaho Falls on the other side.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I think it's
Yeah.
cool down in Idaho Falls. I think I have some cousins who live over there, and I like
I
that
have
area.
a brother that lives in Meridian.
Okay. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
only just like 20 minutes from Meridian. In fact, we lived in Meridian 2 years ago. So we just
Oh,
moved
okay.
a little bit further. My husband's building something over here. So anyway.
Cool.
And where are you located?
Monticello, Utah.
That's right. You're Southern Utah. Okay. I read it before. I was like trying to make sure. And so Southern Utah, and do you love it there?
We've been here a year and it's growing on me.
Okay.
Like,
And you moved from Idaho Falls?
no, we moved from Mount Pleasant, Utah.
Okay.
So that is central Utah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so we moved from pretty rural, and I thought this would be rural, and it's remote. So it's two
Yeah.
different, yeah, two different things. So we do have a little community hospital and clinic, which is good, but no specialties. So we have to drive all the way to primary children's, which is about a 6 hour drive.
Oh no. And so let's go through your kids. I was rereading. So you have a 12, 7, and 20 months. Is that right?
Yeah, he's 21 now, 21
21
months
months.
now.
Okay. Oh, getting close to one. That's
Yeah,
exciting. One,
two.
maybe, or getting close to two. Sorry. Yeah, obviously. My brain. Give me a second. I'm warming up, right?
Right?
Okay. So almost two. And so your oldest child, your 12-year-old, has
He's on the
I'll let you.
he's on the spectrum.
And
Or
then
you could say
hemophilia.
he's neurodivergent.
Okay. And then you said he has hemophilia as well,
Yes,
right? Okay. What
correct.
does that entail? And is that tricky with not being close to a hospital?
So, luckily he has mild hemophilia,
Okay.
and I've been trained to infuse his medication.
Okay.
So, if he needs it, I have it on hand and I can administer it.
Okay.
But sometimes it's tricky, and then I have to take him to the ER. But we do have an ER here,
You do.
which
Okay.
can give him the medication. And really, so the factor he is missing clots internal bleeds.
Okay.
So, where we ever have a problem, because he's mild to moderate hemophiliac, is when he tweaks a joint, like in his knee. If he
Okay.
moves it, like gets it injured, or um, the last time we had to infuse, he lost a baby tooth and it wouldn't stop bleeding. So
Gosh. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, so like
Stuff you don't
oral
expect.
bleeds. So one nice thing is with his spectrum disorder, he doesn't like being physical, like because he's afraid of getting hurt. It's kind of like a fear conscious thing. So he doesn't move much, like get out and get injured, like my 7 year old, who did get staples a month ago in his head.
Oh gosh.
I know.
But you have an emergency room close, so at least.
Oh, right. So my my husband actually is a hemophiliac as well. It runs in
Okay.
the family. And back up, there's a lot, but so I also administer his medication if he gets injured.
Okay.
And I have two different kinds of medication. One dose for kind of a minor injury, and that's what I can administer. And then I have a severe dose. So if we get in a car accident, then that needs to be on hand so the hospital can have it to administer to both my husband and my son. So they have seatbelt identifiers on them that says like an alert tag, but on the seatbelt, because
Oh,
that's where we would have some of the bigger problems.
sure.
Uh, yeah. So, and my son and my husband don't wear the bracelets or the necklaces or anything like that, which is annoying. Not per my request, but I'm like,
Yeah,
whatever, man.
not because you don't want them to, just because they don't.
Right. So, I guess my story starts way back before I had before we got our oldest child. So, we got married in 2007, and by 2008, we realized we had infertility issues. And so we worked with the fertility specialists for 4 years. And while we were trying to conceive, we fostered two children. So we fostered the extreme behavior children that can't be placed in normal home settings. So we had to go through special trainings and set up our homes as a safe home because of their extreme behaviors. Like the first child we had was 6, and he they would just tantrum out really, really bad, like where you would have to do a restraining hold
Wow.
in order for them to calm down. Yeah, it was really rough. But our first, we felt like it was quite a success. He was reunited with his mom, and we were able to get a proper diagnosis for him. So they misdiagnosed him. Um, they diagnosed him as RAD, reactive attachment disorder, but I could see that he was really attached to his mom, and we did everything we could where he could call her and talk with her and keep connected with her. And I said, I feel like he needs to be tested to see if he's on the autism spectrum. And they, with my persistence in asking this, they tested him, and yes, he met the criteria of being on the spectrum disorder. So that was kind of my big first. Before that, I've worked in um, the school setting as a paraeducator with special needs. And so I've had some training and understanding about the autism spectrum. So I was able to help him find that diagnosis. And then we were successfully able to reunite him with his mom.
And so
So
through that, he got some different, like specialized help that helped his behaviors.
yeah, because they were approaching the behaviors differently. They were trying to do a lot of cognitive therapy,
Right.
and at that time, and play therapy, but he really needed more of like an ABA therapy
Right.
for him. Yeah.
Well,
So
that's really neat.
that really helped him. And then they were able to adjust his meds accordingly
Yeah.
too. So
Well, that's
that helped,
amazing. Foster care is no joke. We did it
right?
for a while. It's a serious, serious thing. Was that in Utah? Were you in Utah when you were doing that?
We were, yes.
And so, how's the foster care system in Utah?
I don't know how to compare it because I haven't done it in other states. Um,
Were they pretty easy
but
to work with?
I think so.
Oh, good.
But we went through Rise. It's
Okay.
an agency. So it was kind of the in-between agency for the um it's not CPS. What's it called in Utah? Sorry. DCFS.
Decent.
So it was the in-between, and that's where we received our special training. And we received additional supports on top of it because they got DSPD funding for each of the kids on additionally. So the DSPD funding, they managed it, but it helped because that gave us a certain amount of hours a month that the kids would go get out of home services, and I didn't have to take them, so I would get some respite in
Yeah,
it.
which is
So
necessary
they're
when you're
really,
fostering.
really necessary.
Yeah, like
For real.
respite, it's a real thing. Okay, so how long did he stay with you, your first foster child?
8 months.
8 months. And you
Yeah.
did one at a time, or did you do more than one?
We could only do one at a time
Because of
because
the
of how
special.
extreme, yeah, because of how extreme they were. So in Utah, they have classifications. You have 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
So um, if you're classified as 1, that is pretty much, pretty like basic um, troubles that a child would be removed from their home, right? Two is the child's more elevated. They may need a little extra services. Three is tricky. It's kind of it's like a halfway house situation where they either have come from the mental hospital or they might be on the path to the mental hospital. So it's definitely more um, what's the word? A lot more intervention
Yeah,
at
they
that
need
point.
more.
Yeah, so we had level 3 kids.
Okay.
So our first kid, they were going to place him in a mental hospital, but found our housing situation. And so we were able to help him not be institutionalized, which is really good, for a 6-year-old.
It's really
So
good. It's really
yeah,
good. You guys did an amazing thing.
yeah,
Um,
we felt really amazing about that. So we're like, let's do another one.
and have that one go.
That is great.
Yeah, I've experienced that. I feel that like deep in my soul when you said it. Like, okay, so how did the second one go?
So I feel like she might have been one of the worst cases in Utah. She had been in and out of the system a lot, and we just received her from the mental hospital. And
How
so
old was she?
she was at the time 10 and a half, and she was a drug baby. And she was RAD, reactive attachment disorder, like textbook, really, really problematic, and had a lot of psychotic breaks and tendencies, and very intensive with her. In fact, I got PTSD having her in our home
Yeah.
because she was so intense. Yeah. So um, she would spend a lot of her time doing her freakouts at school because she liked us so much, um, which was so sad, right?
Yeah.
But still really hard as you're trying to love this child. And they just have so many facets of who they are. And it's hard to build connection and trust with them. So,
Yeah. We had a
so
5-year-old that was like that. Um, I imagine he's since been diagnosed with schizophrenia. Uh,
mm,
and same thing. He loved our family. He would even say like, one day maybe I could be a Carvajal, you know?
oh,
And I mean,
well,
just that breaks your heart, right? But same thing, I like everything you're saying, I feel it. Like I remember feeling like this, I'm gonna be traumatized forever from this. And
yeah,
he
well,
was
and so
doing his stuff at school.
like I'm a really strong person, and I just felt like it didn't bother me. It didn't bother me for years. I didn't realize that I had PTSD until years later, that I was living through that. But I was also living through the trauma of infertility, right?
Yeah,
So
that's super traumatic. Yeah.
and working in special needs. So I had a lot on me at the time, and I didn't realize I was putting that much on me until later. So definitely had to work through that. But while she was in our home, my sister-in-law, sorry, I just got a text. um, my sister-in-law came to us and she said, okay, I know you guys have been trying for a long time to grow your family. And in her life situation, she had divorced her first husband and had 3 kids with him, and then remarried another 2 other guys, and that fell through. And then remarried this other guy who has 6 kids too. And it was like a Brady Bunch thing. And she's
Yeah,
kind of unstable, but um,
it's a lot.
was pregnant when she married him, and it just wasn't working out. The marriage wasn't working out, and she just had prayed to God, "What should I do?" And God said, "Well, this baby's always meant to go to Vanessa and Peter." And
Oh,
so, yeah, it was. So he's our first miracle, and that's our oldest, Zach. And so he came to our family out of the hospital. Like, we were there for his birth, and we were able to have him with us from now on. So it's been a cool, incredible
that's
experience
yeah, so amazing.
to
So
have
how far
this
away
kind of
from,
adoption.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, it's okay.
So how far away um, did that your second foster little girl leave, and then what's the
That
like?
is a great question. So my sister-in-law approached us close to Christmas time, um, about the situation, and we still had her in our home.
Okay,
And yeah, so we were trying to juggle, how do we, I don't know if we feel safe enough to bring an infant in the home, um, with her in the home. And so we were working with family services for a while, like, okay, we can't have her in our home anymore.
yeah,
And we had told her, okay, we want you, we want you to be in our home. We love you.
yeah,
And this is what needs to take place in order to have a safe environment for a baby. So, we need you to be able to stay in school all day. We need you to be able to do this and this and this in order for us to have a safe environment for the baby. And she's like, no, I can't do it. And then she told a police officer she was going to kill the baby if he came in the home. Yeah. So they drug their feet up until the end of March, and he was born April 15th. I had 15 days to prepare my home for the baby. Like I couldn't buy stuff, I couldn't put stuff out, I couldn't set up a nursery, I couldn't do anything because it would trigger her. And
sure,
so that was really hard because I felt like I couldn't be excited. I had to
yeah,
hide. I had to hide the fact that I was going to finally have a baby. Um, but she did find a good home with an older couple that she stayed with for quite a few years. I think maybe 4 or 5. I think that's where she graduated from the foster system, is with
okay.
this other couple. So that was really good. Like I felt like, okay, good. And a happy ending, Lord. Thank you.
Yeah,
But we
and I
couldn't
think
have
that
any home.
some people listening might not understand, um, because I was thinking like I have a very similar experience, right? Well, we had 6 kids in the house, and we had this 5-year-old, and then we had Millie. We got the five
Mhm.
year old and Millie one day apart.
Oh, wow.
Millie stayed in the NICU, so I mean, I was visiting her, but he was in our home. And so we had a lot of things, a lot of people. It was a lot on me. My husband was really busy with work, and he was busy in some other ways too. Um, and so I kind of like relate to just feeling like I think a lot of times we think we can just do it all. Like, of course we can, right? You
Yeah,
have
right.
the knowledge, you have the ability. I have lots of kids. I know how to do everything. Um, and I think that the most important, like, it might be hard for people to understand when a situation just won't work in your house anymore, and
Yeah.
and how heartbreaking that is. Um,
Oh,
and it's completely heartbreaking. And I don't think it's a decision, like, I don't hear you saying you made it just really lightly or anything else, right? Like, it's a serious decision. And I think that the thing that gave me like an okay to do it was the situation he went to. And it sounds like the same thing for you. Like, if I
yeah.
had any feeling about where he was going, things may have turned out differently, right?
Right.
Our little guy actually went with family members that they had.
Oh, see?
And
Wow.
so it turned out to be a very, very good thing. And he really didn't want to go. And when I dropped him off, I probably cried for hours.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
and he was making my life miserable. He was making my
Right.
family miserable, but he was 5,
Right.
and nothing was his fault. None of it was his fault.
No.
But he had unplugged Millie's oxygen
Mm,
a couple of times. And so we ended up in a problem, right?
yeah. Yeah.
And but they found this family member, and he really didn't want to go, and he finally left. And then he called me a couple of times, and then he was gonna see the we were gonna meet up, and he was gonna see me one time. And they called me, and they're like, he doesn't want to come this time. And I was like, oh, okay, now I feel good. Like if he
Okay,
doesn't want to
yeah.
come see me, it means that wherever he is, he's safe.
Wow.
And I kind of feel like that with you. Like the next place she went, she graduated, right? Like, so it
Yeah.
worked out. And so the only reason I put my personal story is I just don't want people to mishear how it is in the foster care system. Like you weren't trying to get rid of her and you weren't like,
No, I mean we had tried so hard to make it work where we could have both, right?
yeah,
But when she makes the threats like that, she knew, like she just knew if she said something that bad that she would be taken from the situation. She knew that. And it was so sad that she would say something so hurtful, you know? And that's part of the rad. It's part of that reactive attachment thing.
it's, yeah, trying to make
But
sure you don't have attachments.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
which is just so sad. Um, but they don't understand the safety level too,
Yeah.
where, she found a fork and was chasing us and tearing up our blinds. Like, I mean, there we had to hide our knives and we had to lock anything of sentimental value away because she would destroy it. And we willingly did that. We fostered her for a year. And so
And
we
I imagine that, you know, I keep remembering, like, even with a couple of my foster kids that I had for a shorter amount of time, like, there was something good that we offered. Maybe it wasn't a long-term thing, but I know there was something good. And I'm really glad that it was us and that bridge between him having his family. And I'm really glad that
yeah,
she had you in that bridge between. Um,
for sure.
you know, Okay, so now you're crazy and having a baby, a brand new baby, and you've just had this crazy experience with kids. And
So
how soon did you have his diagnosis as far as hemophilia? And he's your husband's sister's. That's who you
son.
adopted from. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's why
And
the same
so
hemophilia as your husband, right?
genetically, yeah. So genetically, he's my nephew.
Right.
Or my husband's nephew. So how hemophilia works is it goes on the mother's side.
Okay.
So it's really interesting for genetics when you look at the genetic tree on
Yeah.
where this lands. So his mother is my mother-in-law is the carrier.
Okay.
She had 6 kids, and 4 of them were boys, 2 are girls. So you have a 50-50 chance that your boy will have hemophilia if you are
Okay.
a carrier. So she ended up having 50-50. 2
So
boys are carriers, 2 boys are not, interestingly enough. And what's really interesting is she had 2 husbands. So she was married and then divorced and remarried. And the first set of kids goes boy, boy, girl. And the boy, my husband is a carrier. The middle child was not a carrier, but I mean, not affected by hemophilia, but the sister is a carrier. So
okay.
that sister is Zach's mom.
Okay.
And
That's
um
my first. Okay.
and then her second marriage, she had 3 kids, 2 boys and 1 girl. And one of the boys is a carrier, one is not, and the other is affected by hemophilia, and the daughter is a carrier. So
Wow.
I know, right?
Genetics or something. I'm always so amazed. We've had lots of sequencing done for Millie, and I'm always like interested in it and
And
how.
how it works out.
Yeah.
It is so funny because when I go to the hospital with him, if he has a bleed, the first question is, well, my husband usually is with me, and he pipes up and is like, "Yeah, I have hemophilia too." And the doctor is perplexed. He's like, "That's not possible. You can't do that because it
Because
does
they think
not,
it's from
it's
you.
on the woman's X chromosome. So
Right.
any genetic boys we have will not be affected
Yeah.
by hemophilia. But any daughters that we would have had a 50-50 chance of
Being a carrier.
being a carrier. Yeah. So crazy,
That's
right?
amazing. Yeah. So I can see a doctor like, did you marry your sister?
Do you do you know what you're talking about? And we always have to draw out our genetic chart. It's so funny.
Okay, so you knew right away that he had that gene.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And
And
then as
go ahead. He didn't have his first bleed. was when he was 1.5, he um, hit his chin on a table when he was toddling and bit his tongue, which was bad because it just kept bleeding. It was just so much blood. So we had to take him to primaries and they infused him and it stopped and then it would rebleed again because he doesn't know how to not let the hematoma
Yeah.
grow on his tongue.
Right.
So that was rough. Yeah. Um, in fact, oral bleeds seem to be what plagues his family more. And that's what's really interesting with hemophilia. It's each family has kind of their own kind of hemophilia,
Really?
right? So yeah, so you'll have so with my husband's family, they get like knee bleeds are usually pretty bad, and their mouth is where they've had more of the trauma. Weird, right?
It is weird. I mean, mouths bleed a lot.
Yeah, but
So,
like
but
so
that's
if we
weird.
have to do dental work, like when my husband got his wisdom teeth out, it just gushed blood
Yeah.
and he had to have infusion after infusion in order for it to stop bleeding. Just, yeah. Ugh.
Scary.
Right. But I mean, it's manageable because it's so like mild to moderate. I
Yeah.
forget about it all the time. Oh yeah,
That's
I
amazing.
guess.
Like when I read that, I was like, that's crazy. Hemophilia is like a really big deal. But I'm glad you can forget about it. That's actually a good sign. That means you're coping with it really well, or you have it, you feel like you've got it under some sort of
I got
control.
yeah, I've got it under control. Most of the issues I have is actually just dealing with getting the medication for the
Yeah.
year
Making sure you
because
have everything.
it's so expensive. And usually I can do all these gymnastics to get the pharmaceutical company has a copay assistance program.
Okay.
And if I can work it out, I can get my whole deductible paid by the medication. Like,
Oh, nice.
so it has saved us a lot of money over the years, but they're getting smart on it and it's getting harder and harder to do the gymnastics. I know. But I'm like, okay,
Well,
this is gonna save me $7,000.
well, the prices of medications, when Millie was pulling her buttons out all the time, and I called in, I'm like,
Yeah.
I need to purchase them. I don't want, like, I have to have them. And they were telling me the prices. And I was like, what are you guys talking about? That cannot possibly be the price of this little plastic thing that breaks
Oh,
every
I
time
know.
it pulls it out. I know. I'll never understand it. Okay, so you have your first son, and then it's a few years before your second.
Yeah. Oh, so we didn't get his diagnosis
Oh yeah, yeah.
until he was 5.
Okay.
And
That's a typical
um,
for autism, right? 4 or 5.
it shouldn't be because they're always pushing. It's really important to get early intervention, right? But
Yeah.
then being, but then when you're in early intervention, they're like, well, we don't give a diagnosis. We just say it's delayed. He's delayed.
So
So
was he delayed verbally or physically?
he was delayed physically. So he was delayed in crawling. He was delayed in walking, but he could read by 2.5.
Wow.
So yeah, you're like, but it's not normal.
No. Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's sometimes what is also a tale, right?
Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
extreme brilliance in some ways can also be.
Well, and I had it. What took so long is my uncertainty as a parent
Yeah.
because of the adoption. You know, I felt like, oh, he's not connecting with me because of the adoption.
Oh,
Oh, and then I would say things to my husband, and he would be like, oh, that's just a family trait. Don't worry about that. That's normal. And I'm like,
I'm sorry you felt that way.
right. So it took me a lot of growing up and learning to advocate for him and embracing that he was my child because there was that family dynamic.
Yeah.
It made it tricky.
Oh,
Yeah. And
yeah, I imagine that would.
and it still affects his sister. So my sister-in-law, you know, she didn't like that I sought the she feels like she gave her gift was broken. And so
Oh,
that's been hard to work through too.
yeah.
because of that. Yeah. So
That's a,
nothing's easy.
no, I mean, seriously, you can say that like 100 more times. Nothing is easy. I, that's a hard one. So I have two adopted brothers, and then we have Millie who's adopted. And I feel like every adoption story is very different. Um, and it all comes with things, I don't know if because my two brothers are adopted or it's just because of how strongly I felt about Millie. I've never felt like anything except that she was my baby. Like
Mm.
I always say that if it weren't for all the drug use in utero, you could convince me that I gave birth to her. You couldn't convince me that I did that, but you could convince, like, I almost feel, that way about her. But her birth mom didn't stay. She left right after delivery and never
Oh.
resurfaced. And
So
so,
was she kept in a drug room?
you
Did they
know,
have her?
she wasn't because she was 1 pound when she was born, and the
Oh, okay.
drugs are usually stored in fat. So she didn't even have any
So
withdrawal.
she didn't have to detox. That was one of the hardest areas of the NICU. Like,
Yeah, I've been there. We've had some other babies. Uh,
yeah, that's
If
so
foster
hard.
families too. Yeah. That's one of
Hmm.
the worst things, holding those babies who are detoxing. But no, Millie was just 1 pound 8 ounces. So she didn't they say that they store the drugs in the fat, so she didn't have any of that. She
Oh
had
wow.
other difficulties from the drug use.
What week did she come?
She was 28.
Okay. That's
But
teeny for 28.
well, there's no there's no way to know.
Oh,
If
that's
she
true,
was, in
right?
fact, they have her written down as 30 weeks, and every doctor, because the mom had said she was exactly 30 years old, and Millie was exactly 30 weeks pregnant. And every doctor is like, no, we're not even like,
Mm.
it's not even in the realm of possibility. But because mom had said it, that's what's on all the charts.
Oh dear.
But underneath it is written every doctor's opinion that it's
More than
definitely
28 weeks.
micropreemie and definitely less than 28 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's rough.
So So you decided to look for an idea. So I ask you only because Millie we just put in a request to be diagnosed or to not be diagnosed, to be tested for autism. And they told me
Okay.
around 4 is a good age.
Okay,
And so
good.
that's the first time that she'll be tested. So you had him in a developmental preschool? Is that how you got
No,
tested? Oh, okay.
no, he went to a neighbor's preschool. We
Okay.
were actually we were in Idaho Falls at the time. And um at age 4, he was begging to have a brother or sister. And so that was breaking my heart.
I'm
And so
sure.
we decided to jump back into the fertility thing. And we
So
had a
what
home still.
fertility, sorry, I keep interrupting you. So what fertility things had you tried before him? And then,
We had done Clomid and we had done IUIs.
okay,
And but they were unsuccessful. And I felt I got medical trauma from that. I felt
sure,
like they were milking us dry and we're not getting any results. Oh, well, do this first. It's less invasive. Do this. It's less expensive. But you're all that less expensive, less invasive adds up to, we had spent enough money. We should have just done an IVF at the time.
right,
And our next step was IVF. And I almost feel like they kind of made it a scary thing because you had try all these things first and then IVF. But I had such bad endometriosis that both of my tubes were shot. So
okay,
all of that was not working anyways. It
right,
wasn't going to do it in the first place. Yeah. So, and my husband had low motility. So we were like two strikes against us. And
right.
so IVF really was the only path in order for conception.
And it should have been the
So
first thing.
yeah, so we had a home cell that we were able to capture enough to do IVF for in Idaho. And so that's how we got our middle child. And
Okay,
at that time, I was 35 and we froze our remaining embryos. So
okay,
we implanted two, and I was really scared because my mom had twins.
okay.
So I was worried about them splitting and having quadruplets.
Oh,
So
goodness. We always come up with the scariest thing ever and scare ourselves to death with it.
So, so when we heard one heartbeat, we were really happy. And I had a really great pregnancy with him. In fact, I felt really awesome because when you're pregnant, the hormones that create the endometriosis isn't there.
Yes.
So I had a fantastic pregnancy, and I um, had an annoying delivery because I think I was another medical abuse. We were out of state. I didn't have any support, and the my doctor kind of took advantage of that and was saying that his head circumference looks really big. We're going to have to induce and probably do a C-section because of how big he was. And so scare, scare, scare. And I didn't feel like I was educated enough. And I think he was like, "Oh, well, she's old, so we'll just do a C-section."
Yeah.
So I felt like I was pushed into a C-section and didn't have the opportunity to try to have a vaginal birth. So that sucked because, I mean, that's part of the experience of being a woman in a way when you're trying to get this experience for over a decade, right? To
Yeah.
be a mom, and then that's ripped from you. So that sucked.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah, and
can
then
see.
I really, really wanted to nurse at that point with my, so he came out healthy. They he did have some like heart, like he dropped in his heart rate, so that's why they justified
Okay.
the C-section to get him out. But he really was fine. He
And how
was
big was he?
he was like 8 pounds and 6 ounces.
Oh,
Like I
wow.
felt like a chunk. He was great.
Yeah, really good.
Not too big, not too small, just right.
That's
He
like
was
a perfect size baby. That's like
right.
newborn clothes, right? 8 pounds is newborn clothes.
Is that what it is? I forgot.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure the 8 pounders fit exactly in the newborn clothes, just right.
I felt like my little preemie was a newborn forever.
Yes. Yeah. I think Millie could probably, no, probably not now, but a couple months ago, she could have shimmied her way into one.
So I really tried hard to nurse with him because that was
Okay.
like part of that. Like, okay, well, I still want to grasp onto the experience of womanhood or motherhood too. And
And
so,
probably, I mean, maybe, I don't know if I'm just reading this, but like you're kind of thinking this might be my shot, right?
right, my last one. Yeah, pretty much. We did freeze the other embryos, but we didn't know where we were going to get the money to do it again, or we didn't know what our future would be. And so, really struggled, and he dropped a bunch of weight the first 6 weeks with nursing. I know, but um, we had the whole ordeal with nipple shields and on and on and on. But I was so freaking stubborn. I just kept doing it.
And what
And he had
happened?
he had colic, and then we finally we got it to work. Yeah, so I have an elastic nipples, and that was kind of the problem.
Uh-huh.
And so figuring out how to latch him and just get it working right. And it was hard to get both of us figuring it out, but we did it. And he
It
nursed till
was
he
worth
was,
it, right?
yeah, he nursed till he was 1. And then he was like, "I'm done," and stopped.
Perfect. That's perfect. You know, I think it kind that people get a little bit scared to push hard on the nursing. But I think with a newborn who's like fine, you know, no problems, they try hard. I think it's worth it to be stubborn.
Well,
Um,
and it really took someone saying, "You don't have to do this."
yeah.
And I stopped for one entire day, and then I finally got engorged. And I was like, "What?"
And then it was time. You're like,
And
now I'm gonna
I
really
could
want
do
to do
this.
it.
Yeah,
That definitely gives you the impetus to do it. One day of engorgement, you want a nurse for sure.
right. So, and then we moved to California, and
Okay.
um, we weren't thinking of growing our family for a while, especially because all the embryos were in Utah, and there's like legal things. You have to have it done where they're stored.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, because then you have to like adopt your embryo in California again. I don't know. There's just, and
Yeah,
it's
that sounds
California,
complicated.
right?
Well, yeah, they're going to have some sort of weird rule.
Yeah, exactly. And so, right before COVID hit, my husband was laid off. And so we moved back to Utah to live with my mom. And then COVID hit like a few weeks later. And so we were stuck in Utah.
And Utah was
And,
kind of open. My son that who you met, he moved to Utah his senior year so that he could play football. He played football for a high school there. We
oh,
lived in
yeah.
and he moved in with my best friend
What
so that
high
he could
school?
play. He went to Springville High School.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so he graduated from Springville High School, and I drove every weekend and saw every game he played with
Oh, my
Millie and
God.
all of our stuff. Yeah, I drove from Nevada because it was his senior year. We've been doing football since he was 6. But anyway, so COVID is wild, and your husband got laid off, and tons of people got laid off at that
Yeah.
time, right?
And this was right before COVID too. And so, but we were lucky because he got a severance with it.
Oh,
So
good.
we were able to use the severance through COVID
Okay.
and find employment. And so, um, once he had employment and we had some insurance, then we'd already had our embryos frozen for 4.5 years, and every year it costs more money to keep them frozen
Okay.
to incentivize you to use your eggs,
Sure.
use your embryos. So we did another round of IVF, and we were convinced this time to just do one embryo, and but pick two out, and you pick the stronger of the two and implant that one. And we did that, but it failed, so it didn't work. So that was pretty crushing. Um, but it's a weird loss because it's like a lost hope. Like it wasn't quite there, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I can
Yeah, it
I
was a,
I can kind of see that.
yeah, I mean, like I didn't feel connected to it yet. Obviously, it wasn't like a heartbeat or anything. So, and then we just like life got crazy, and I started to grow a really big endometrium cyst on my ovary. And
Okay.
this was in 2021, at the end of
Pretty
2021.
painful, right?
That was insanely painful. It was like the size of a softball. It's really
Yeah.
big and really, and pretty scary. And so I went on this insane anti-inflammatory diet to just reduce the pain because I was in so much pain.
What diet was
And I had no gluten, no soy, no dairy, no life, no sugar.
nothing good? All the good things, no. Can't have them.
I
That's
think
my
I just,
diet right now.
well, we raised chickens and I think I just ate eggs. I don't know what I did. Eggs and salad.
Eggs, organic eggs. That was all I ate. And some
That's
lettuce.
fine.
So did it help though? Was the pain worth it? Was the misery worth it?
Oh, it was that, yeah, it really did help. And I was really healthy. And we had gone through some grief counseling with the fertility. And the counselor, so I was doing really good. And the counselor had suggested, well, I think you're at a point, maybe it's time to close this chapter, right? And move on. You've got two great kids. Let's look at how we're going to um, what you want to do with the embryos.
Right.
So they've in the past they give you three choices. You can terminate, you can donate to science, or you can adopt them out. You can give them away. And she presented an option that, like, I wasn't ready to give it away. I wasn't ready to terminate them, or none of that felt right. And
Right.
so she gave the option. Oh, and by the way, like I had my physician saying, time for hysterectomy, time to rip it all out. You're done.
Hey.
Uh, but no, it's not done yet. And so she said, well, what you can do is you can do an unassisted IVF. So they just do an implantation and you're done.
Okay.
And leave it up to God. And I was like, okay, yeah, because the medication actually aggravated my endometriosis. So
Sure.
I think, yeah, so when I did that IVF round, I think that's when I got this huge cyst. There were, yeah, the middle IVF round that failed. And so I didn't want the medication again because it was just going to exacerbate it, right? And so we went to the fertility doctor, and she's like, well, what she's saying is actually we do it off cycle, and it's a way to kind of bury your embryos in you. Like they will not live and they will not, there will be no success rate. She's like, um, and the same price, you could just have an IVF round.
Yeah, just try it.
Yeah, so let's just try it. Let's give it a chance. And at the time we had 5 embryos left. And so um, I know.
I'm like waiting to hear. Are you going to say you did them all?
No, 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 no. I felt at peace at trying to do 2 again, like our first time, and that we were going to do it unmedicated. So they were just going to track my cycle and implant, and that was it. Um, and I was like, okay, I feel like that, and then that really will be a miracle from God if it happens or not. Yeah, and then I can say I tried my best, and the remaining embryos we would give to someone else and pay forward because we received the blessing of Zach, and we feel like someone else can have a blessing in their life of an embryo. So we felt really good about it, and it took, and and yay, I know. And I was having a really awesome pregnancy. I was still sticking to my anti-inflammatory diet, and I was swimming every morning with water aerobics with the 70-year-old women. That was
That's the
awesome.
best place to be. My favorite gym class is the water aerobics with the old ladies.
It's great.
They know
There's
how to
so
have a good time. They are my
yeah,
favorite people. They don't take it too seriously. It's just right for me. It's the only class I go to.
I love it. I love it. And anyways, in November, so at the beginning of the pregnancy, oh, you're old. You're high
Yeah.
risk. And at the time, I was 41. So yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. So they had me go into MFM, and the MFM, they were like, he's developing, he's doing really great. We don't see any problems. Um, and in November, they said, so I conceived in August, and in November, they said, all right, we don't need to see you till March. You're doing so great.
Wow.
Right? I'm
You
like,
thought
cool.
things were like going well, but I feel like I
Yeah.
know the end of this story.
And
So,
and I felt really amazing because my endo was subsided. My
yeah,
pregnancy
it
was
wasn't
going
as
great.
bad as the last one, right?
Yeah. So I wasn't in pain and was doing really well. And then we went to a family party for Christmas, and it all went down from there. I contracted N1H1 flu,
Okay.
and I felt like a resurgence of COVID. Like, even though I was tested for COVID, I felt like the virus was awakened and somehow,
Yeah.
kind of like a long COVID thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then my blood pressure started going crazy. And I was going in for blood pressure checks, and my stupid doctor's office in Podunk, Mount Pleasant, mailed me some results. And I didn't get a check for like 2 weeks because I didn't hear from them. Like, why didn't you call me? Like, this is an urgent thing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and they were like, 2 weeks later, oh, we think you should probably get tested for preeclampsia. Like, what?
2 weeks.
Two
That's a long
weeks.
time.
That's a long time. And then in that time, for sure, my baby was getting restriction in his blood flow, right? And I had no idea. And so they finally, I go into the clinic and get the test taken to see if I'm preeclamptic. And I'm sitting in the waiting room for results, and a nurse walks by, and she's like, "Oh, you're expecting?" Yep, I am. And this is an older lady, like in her 50s. And she's like, "Just so you know, and you're prepared, a lot of women around here are birthing really bad placentas. Like their placenta is mush."
What?
and the baby
Like
seemed to
in
be
your area?
okay. Yeah,
Was she
the
trying to
the
freak you out or what?
I know. I was like, what? and and she was like, I think it's a product of COVID.
Really?
And yeah. Um, anyways,
Never heard anything like that. That's interesting.
right. But there has been an insane increase in premature births, like
Yeah.
a huge spike, and miscarriages as well.
Miscarriages and you kind of wonder like that's been going up and up and up over the years, right?
Yeah.
Because women are carrying babies older too.
Hmm.
That's one of the
Yeah, that's true.
reasons, and people are waiting longer to have children. But I don't know. I haven't seen anything like that's definitively like during COVID it got a lot worse. But I mean, you always have to wonder.
Well, we don't have this. We don't have enough information yet. There's and there and it almost like seems like the medical community is like, okay, it's over, it's done. And
Yeah. Well, and
they're not wanting to know they're
they
not
don't want
wanting
it
to know
related
the
to shots or anything else, right? Like,
yeah, they don't want to know repercussions of the illness, right? They just
yeah,
want to think it's over. So,
yeah,
but sure enough, so the very next day I go up to my MFM and I had made plans to see my sisters because that's where they lived. So I
yeah.
went from Mount Pleasant to Provo, which is an hour away, and I go in and have the ultrasound, and then I'm just chatting about the most stupid random thing. Like our, we had a pet rat that we bought and didn't know it was pregnant, and it just gave birth to 13 babies. And I know, and I'm telling her this and stupid thing about my pet rat. And she gets really quiet and really solemn. And she says, honey, I got to get the doctor in here right now. And I was like, what? And she's like, it's okay. I will get the doctor. And the doctor came in and the doctor said, okay, you need to go to labor and delivery right now. And so I was so caught off guard. I was like, what? I would, I am not anywhere. And
So you're
I
like
was only
28 weeks or 26?
26.
26.
Yeah,
Oh,
I know. And I just, so they
yeah,
get me into
totally
the
unprepared.
room. They start the magnesium. They start everything. And it's just spiraling
And
really fast.
magnesium is a wild thing, right?
Oh my
Magnesium
God.
is the wildest thing I've ever been on in my life.
I was tripping.
Yeah, no, for real. Like if I never have like done any drugs or anything, but I do think that that must be what it's like. My eyes were going different directions. I could
Yeah,
not I could only get one focused at a time. It's bizarre.
I couldn't think. And all I could think is they want me to lay in bed on this drug for 3 weeks.
I
And they
can't.
were
Yes.
And they were like, if we can just keep him in for 3 more weeks, then it will help his lungs and we'll have so much better recovery and he won't have long as a NICU stay. And so, and that was when they first got me in the room. And 3 hours later, that was it. Just 3 hours later, they
Yeah.
were, no, we've got to get this baby out now. We got to do a C-section. And so, gosh,
And
it,
did your
I
husband
was
get
in
there in
shock.
time?
So my husband, he yeah, he got there, but my sisters were there first, which I was really grateful for because they
Yeah.
were going to have lunch with me. And
Okay.
yeah, my husband did show up, but he yeah, I had nothing though. And for delivery
No,
and everything. Yeah,
at
I had
26 weeks, you're barely like thinking about what could I need to get, right?
it. Right? Exactly. I don't have a name. I don't know what's going on.
That is okay. So, how did the delivery go? How did you like? I guess just how did it go from there?
So they wheeled us to the OR, and I'd had a C-section before, and the anesthesia affects me where I like shake
Yeah, me too.
uncontrollably,
Same thing.
and I had to strap my arms down and everything. So, which is a really interesting moment because I felt like I was on a cross.
It's super.
Yeah, for my baby. Like God, take my life so he can live. Um, it was quite a moment, because I had no idea what would what he would be like. And my husband was there and he was able to go with my son Jacob to the NICU and then they spent hours stitching up and they lanced my cyst, which I was grateful for. Thanks for popping it. And they stitched him up and I was still so out of it with all that magnesium, right?
Yeah.
And the epidural and um I don't think I saw him for maybe 8 hours because I was so out of it. But I didn't even know, right? I'm just
Yeah.
recovering.
Yeah. Just
Yeah, but like I had a nurse wake me, arouse me like, honey, you got to get pumping so you can get milk for that baby. And so I poured myself into pumping and I ended up pumping 18 months for this baby. So it was insane.
and
But
such
that was
that's a good thing for him.
yeah, it was. It really was.
And
It
probably
helped.
for you.
Yeah. It gave me purpose, especially because he ended up being in the NICU for 6 months.
I read that. That's a long time.
Yeah, we
Like
were oldie
Millie was
moldy.
4.
What was
Millie
that?
was Millie was 4 months.
Oh, that's
And
still a long time.
I was only there for 2.5 of it. But man,
Mm.
it's a long time.
Yeah,
And
he
how did you
ended
do
up,
it? Because you don't live close to the NICU. So how did you
no,
make that work? How did you make the NICU work?
we lived 60 miles away, but my husband worked in Provo. So
Okay.
he commuted anyways. So we had arranged childcare. We would wake up and have a normal morning routine and send our two boys off to school. And then grandma would pick them up because she lived in that area.
Okay.
She would pick them up after school and watch them. Or we had neighbors and other friends take them and watch them till we got home in the late evening.
I love to hear about all the support systems. So you have your parents that live near you or his parents?
My mom lived near us when we lived in Mount Pleasant.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you had neighbors who you trusted and felt good with.
Yeah, exactly. Like our neighbor across the street, like they were amazing. They would they'd cook us dinner once a week through that whole six
Because
months.
at this time you have a 5 and 3 year old. Am I right about that? Have I got the numbers?
No, so I had a 10 and a
Oh, 12. That's right. 12 and 5.
yeah,
I
yeah,
said
so
10 and 5.
he was like 10 and a half and
Okay.
5 and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 10 and 5.
So that
I have it
so
mixed
that
up.
was a little tricky because he was um in kindergarten. So I'm like, oh, kindergartner's rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the half
Well,
day.
and your
And I
10
kept
year old
begging.
too. 10 year olds are kind of at a weird spot. They're like on the precipice, right? Of like,
And he really struggled because he doesn't process change with his autism. And he was dealing with some bullying. And so I had all that to deal with on top of the
and
baby.
so your 10 year old at the time, um, he in a specialized school at that point, or has he ever been, or does he have to?
He's always been mainstream education because he's really smart.
Sure. Yeah.
And most of his issues are social emotional.
Sure.
So, but the school in Mount Pleasant had a really bad behavior plan. It was too disciplinary
Yeah.
and it made him the problem
Right.
and made him feel isolated and it became really bad. And in fact, so baby was born in January and the next school year I put him in online school because I didn't want to have to because of all the problems that were happening at that school. And then we moved to Monticello and we've had a pretty good support school system down here
Oh, good.
where they
That's a
had a
huge.
different approach.
That's a huge deal.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
the school system makes so much of a difference in everything.
And definitely like the attitude about it, right?
Yes.
Because I felt like the school was encouraging bullying because they were isolating,
Yeah.
and they were making him the problem. And then everybody just piles on it because they don't know better, the kids. So that was really hard to deal with. And I was trying to get him counseling through Utah, the University of Utah, and trying to get some additional support services for him while we were de dealing with the baby in the NICU. And gosh, the hoops and everything at the very end of jumping through all the paperwork and all the interviews, they were like, "Oh, well, here's a website that he can have virtual intervention."
What if this was the first thing we talked about?
Oh my gosh.
It's so crazy. So okay, so he was in the your youngest Jacob, right? He was in the
Uh-huh.
NICU in Provo or in Salt
Yeah,
Lake?
in
Okay,
Provo.
in Provo. And you said that you just managed that with family and friends for 6 months. I'm still
And
amazed.
so we were really lucky. They allowed us to, so Provo Hospital has kind of a Ronald McDonald house
Yeah,
that
yeah,
they run through IHC. So it's actually run through the hospital, not Ronald McDonald, and they were more lenient because it was during the winter season and not as many people were needing it. And
right.
so
Not
we
during the
had a
house.
room. No, yeah, so they gave us a room, and I think it was like $60 a month, but so worth it
Yeah,
because it was a place where I could have a break from from the NICU. So my husband would go to work, and I would spend probably 4 hours intensive in the NICU, and I would go eat my lunch at the guest house and take a break, and that's where I pumped in private.
yeah,
Yeah. And then go back for the second half of the day until my husband was done with work. And then my husband would spend an hour with the baby and we would drive home. So that was our schedule for till the end of school. But because we had the guest house, we ended up moving the whole family there during the summer because we didn't know what to do with our boys.
sure.
We can't have them unwatched and we'd have school helping out.
Yeah.
So we all lived in this like one room motel for
So did your kids like it? Because we actually had our house flooded twice and we had to live in hotels and my kids loved it.
So
Is that so fun?
my middle child is obsessed with hotels anyways, so he
Yes.
super loved it.
I don't know. They, after living in that hotel, I'm like, why do we provide a nice big house? We should just get an apartment and you guys
Right?
love this kind of thing.
Totally. But we had our bikes that we brought up on a trailer and parked in the parking lot. And there's a bike trail right behind the guest
Provo's got
house.
all sorts of stuff, right? Like
Yeah,
Provo's
so
totally set up for that.
and then we got a pass to the rec center. Anyways, they had a great they had a really good summer doing things. And I was able to find a YMCA camp where they could go for the first part of the day, and I could go to the baby.
Okay.
And then my sisters were really great at taking me to watch them, so I could be with the baby. And then we ended up having to do a lot of. He was getting to the stage where he was so much older and awake and alert that it was better for me to be there in the evening to put him down to sleep, and then I could start building the habit of me putting him to sleep and
Angels.
not a nurse.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really critical for me.
And so
But I felt like
he was in there the longest for his lungs. Why was he in there?
partially, so he got pneumonia twice,
Okay.
which delayed his lung development a lot.
Yeah.
And then because he was on such intensive respiratory support at the beginning, it pushed air into his abdomen, and then the air went into his intestines. So he really struggled with food absorption.
Okay.
And he was on TPN for
Oh,
about 3 months.
yeah.
So a long time because he struggled. Um,
Yeah, and that's total parental nutrition. So that's when they make it specific for your body and it's like it just goes through your veins almost, right? Like
yeah,
it's like
yeah. So they had to have a PIC
yeah,
line.
yeah.
And fortunately, when they placed the PIC line, um, it went into his liver, right?
Yeah.
But they nicked his liver and caused a blood clot. So they were worried that the blood clot would get loose and cause, a stroke, right? So, the blood clot kept us in for a long time, and he had to be on Lovenox to see if it could reduce the blood clot. And it was affecting his liver. So, like, he was having such bad liver problems. We were a week away from having a liver transplant because of
And then what happened? Like he just got better or what? He just miracle?
just miracles. Yeah, just a lot of prayer and miracle. Like, it was quite a miracle that he just had healed, and they stopped the Lovenox. I told them, I was like, we got to stop it. I think it's harming him. It's not hurting him. It's not helping anymore. We're not seeing a change in his blood clot. I feel like it's not going to go anywhere. And the doctors finally agreed with me and they took him off that drug. And after that, he started like increasing so much better in um, healing. And I finally moved him to, after taking him off Lovenox, he's on CPAP for a really long time. Um, just trying to recover. I mean, he was so sick with his liver issues. He was just this little tiny bronze
Yeah.
baby. I'm tiny. I mean, so at 26 weeks, he was 1 pound, 4 ounces. And they called
Like
him they called him a nano preemie because of how little he was.
so tiny.
And getting to tolerate feeds has been some of our biggest struggles because
So
of all the underdeveloped. Oh,
yeah.
go ahead.
Well, and they don't do a lot, right? Like with feeding. Sorry, I'm readjusting, but they don't do a lot with feeding when they're focused on breathing.
Right. So
Um,
he had an NG, right?
right.
And they ended up having to do an NJ
Okay.
because but he's a fighter and a stinker, and he kept pulling out his NJ.
The ones who survive they're just little turkeys. I don't know why.
Yeah, he just
It's how they stayed, but man, mine's a little turkey.
and you know how hard it is to place an NJ. You have to have the
Oh, it's
X-ray, and
serious
it's
business.
rough. So I think they were like by the 5 or 6 time, like, we're done. Since he's
He
not
pulled
keeping
out
it
that
in.
many times.
Oh yeah, Ev- like every day. So it was in a row. It wasn't just like,
Oh.
and he was strong too to be able to
He
do
and
that.
Millie are meant to be best friends.
And poor thing, we had him like I bought this special sacks where his hands couldn't come out and he would still sneak it up.
Oh,
Sneak it up.
I don't know. I don't know how they do it. Millie had no control of her body except that she could put her finger like this so her oxygen could not get back in her nose no matter what. And she would sit there with her alarm blaring and her finger in between her oxygen. I mean, like the things these babies can do when they're like, she's going to be a vegetable. And I'm like, probably not, is my guess, because she can do this one thing. Um,
You want to say hi?
well, yeah, let me say hi. Hi, this is Jacob. Hi, Jacob. Man, you're a cute guy. Look at your hair. You got the whitest hair. I love it.
Okay, we
Hi.
can not touch it. It go bye-bye if we touch it.
So cute. Well, we have been talking for almost like a little over an hour, so we probably
Oh,
should wrap up. But I just want to hear so maybe like give us kind of the breakdown of the last 2 years and what that's been like.
so really quick, so he ended up really getting a really bad so he got a really bad herniated testicles.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So both were really herniated. He ended up having 2 surgeries to repair them in the NICU. That also took 6 months because of that. But on the second surgery, they said, we advise you to place a G tube. He hasn't he hasn't had anything orally for these first 5.5 months. So we just don't think we feel like he's going to have oral aversion probably, and this might be something that you might want to think about doing. And that was really taxing because I had no idea. I wanted him to nurse and I wanted him to have
Sure.
be normal, right? After
Yeah.
all of this. And it just came down to him ripping out the NG all the time, and I just was traumatized. Like, I'm not going to place that NG. I don't want to do that. I will have to fight my child and I will ruin my relationship with him if I have to put that NG every day. And so we did go with the G tube, and that was our quickest ticket out of the NICU too.
Yeah,
Like,
I think that is one of the things they tell you. Like, if you want to get out, this is something that
yeah,
you
exactly.
have to know that
And
they
so
can, you know,
they,
thrive.
they can, yeah, that they can have food, right?
Right. Yeah, it's pretty important.
And so he was doing some oral feeds. He was nursing before we left, and he was taking bottle. And I thought he would, well, he's only going to be on this G tube for just a few months, get us through this, and it'll all be supplementary or for medication. And then we were only home for, I'd say, 7 weeks. And that's finally when we got into the pulmonologist.
Okay.
And it's just insane. You're so used to seeing doctors every day,
I know.
specialists, to
Yes.
nothing. And you're like,
Yep.
but I need to see an x-ray of my child's lungs. It's
Yes.
been forever.
Yes. It's so weird. Leaving the NICU is like a whole weird thing. It's
Oh
weird to
yeah.
be there. It's a different world. It's weird to be out of it. I, yes. I think
Yes.
probably everyone that's been through the NICU will listen and be like, yes, it's weird. All of it.
I would love if they had a clinic for preemies that
Yeah.
we could have all of the specialists in that same location, and they could coordinate, because I felt that's what helped the babies the most is the teamwork.
Yeah.
And
I think
they're
so
all
too.
separated, and you have
Yeah.
to become such a strong advocate for everything.
Well, and you have
But
to be really clear about what you're looking at and who you're talking. I mean, it becomes a full-time project.
it
And
is. It's
I
a lot.
hadn't even thought until you said that. I think that's the most brilliant idea. Like, here, you have one appointment, it's 3 hours long, and you see this person, this person, this person. Our gastro and dietitian do that. They come in together. So I don't
Oh,
have to,
that's good.
but no one else, everyone else I'm seeing separate.
Yeah, but like my primary care doesn't talk with them. Like,
Oh, I mean, they're supposed to.
right. But if it was all centrally located, and I think if there was communication, then these kids could circumvent a lot of the troubles that we seem to be cycling through all the time, right?
Yeah, I think so for sure. I agree with you 100%. Okay, so
So they at the appointment, she watched him nurse, and she was like, I think he's aspirating. And why are you not seeing a feeding therapist yet? Because I'm like, because we can't get in. So she was able to get like a push order for a therapist. And the therapist watched, and we just concluded it was unsafe for his lungs to have any oral. So we cut all oral feeds, and he was doing a lot better off oral feeds. So just a long
yeah,
time, long, hard winter. And we ended up moving down here in the last November, in the middle of all of the hard transition coming home and trying to figure all this out. And then having to reestablish all the medical yet again
yeah, that's the
was
hardest thing with moving.
insane.
We moved when Millie was around 2, and it was like,
It's just insane. And we have crappy insurance and really crappy services down here. Our durable medical equipment for the oxygen is stupid. Such a bad
I
company.
don't know if anyone has a good DME. We should hear about it. If anyone's got a good durable medical for oxygen, because that I fought with those people more than I fought with anybody in my entire life. I don't know what the deal is or why they're so weird and stingy with oxygen, but I would be down to my very last like half tank driving to pick it up because they couldn't deliver it.
Uh,
Like random,
is
random stuff.
is
And
she
it's
on it all the
like
time then?
not anymore. That was back,
Okay.
we're done. But when she was 2, she was still on it. And I
Okay.
just remember those were the very worst people. The feeding team, I don't know, whatever. They're like this, but sometimes I'm like, you guys do know that if you don't send me the order, she doesn't eat. Like I don't get other food. I don't know. So but yeah, oxygen, we had a really hard time with our oxygen people, and that was in Nevada. But you
Mm.
have oxygen through the night still, you said? You
Yeah,
still
so he
have
still
oxygen,
gets
right?
oxygen at night, and we're so close to being off oxygen, but we have to show 3 months of really good weight gain
Yeah.
before them to
I've been
say,
there.
okay, we're done.
Probably same age, 2 years old.
Yeah, almost. But is we're struggling with feeds again, always. And he just like he just cracked today, by the way, 19 pounds, 19.2 pounds. Like you're in the 19
I
pound range.
remember the 19 pound, but Millie is 27 now at 4 years old.
Wow.
And
Jeez.
but we go to where we lose a couple pounds and then we gain
Hmm.
like this. I don't know. So, well, congratulations. Almost 20. Almost 20.
Almost 20. And well, we switched to doing home blends. So
Okay.
we're kind of doing a hybrid of home blends and
And he's
complete
tolerating it okay.
pediatric. So that's the problem. I didn't. He started not tolerating them, and I had to backtrack, and it was because of egg. He
Okay.
didn't like. He's intolerant to eggs.
We
Didn't
tried
know
a
that.
whole bunch of home blends and recipes during COVID because we couldn't get food, and she lost the most weight ever. I think she ended up losing 5 pounds.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I was miserable. It was so scary. And I even had one of the dietitians tell me, well, we can't get her food. And I'm like, well, what can I give her from this store? And they're like, not really anything. I'm like, what are we talking about right now? Are you literally just saying don't feed your child?
Oh my
And
gosh.
so I just got on the internet and tried a bunch of recipes, but we had no luck. And finally, they started giving them back to us.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah,
You
but
said she's unnourished.
she can only do nourish. It's the only
Mm.
thing. We have tried anything else. We lose tons of weight, get super ill. Um,
Oh.
but she's ever since we got nourished, it's like the best thing that ever happened to us. So
So we're stuck on complete pediatric, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to do home blend because my insurance won't cover anything else, and I just don't like it.
yeah,
It's crap.
it's kind of
So
proteiny, right? It's like a protein shaky,
I
or
just
what's
it just has
got in
some like it's a pouch,
it?
so
Okay,
it's a blended food pouch,
okay.
but it's turning him orange.
Oh yeah, Nourish Millie's completely orange.
Yeah,
You can see it around her nose and everything. In fact, her GI doctor is always like, "Oh, I can see your nourishing. You look like you bathed. You looked like you bathed in pumpkin before you came."
I have kids. I have people say, "Oh, does is he jaundice?" And I'm like, "No, it's just a pumpkin."
Just only eats pumpkin and squash, actually.
Pretty much. But I mean, so he tolerated breast milk, and I started introducing goat's milk
Okay.
to his blended food because you have to water it down. So I didn't
Yeah.
want to just do water because he just needs as many calories as he can get.
Sure.
So he tolerated all that, and it's just been this egg that's been a problem. But when you say tolerate, it's like there's, you know, um, yeah, he can put I can put it in his stomach, but there gets to a point where he just gets too full. And that's my biggest issue with the home blend is the volume amount
Yeah.
is just insane. Like I'm pumping food in this kid all day long. And and
Yeah, and
eventually
that
he
has
throws
other
up.
repercussions, right?
Yeah, because
Like,
like there'll be times I push it in and it immediately comes back out. And I'm like, oh, dang it. I just lost all that food.
yeah. I I don't know. G tubes are really hard to. That's why we try to get our dietitian as often as they'll let me see them because
Mm,
it's just for her, for Millie, for us, we have a really like it has to be very strategic as far as trying. Even when we try to add some in, if
mm.
we add a little bit too much, she's crazy. I don't know. So it's a hard thing. So
It's
the
really, really
openings are
hard.
working a little bit though. It sounds like that's pretty cool. That's my
Yeah.
wish. I wish I could do home blends. Like maybe when
So
she gets bigger, I'll try it.
I think our big win is he's off a pump during the day and just pump it and continuous at night.
So is he eating by mouth at all or no
A
still?
little bit, a little bit. He eats pretzels and cookies and suckers.
Amazing. That's amazing. Well,
Yeah,
I whatever you can get him. I told Millie, I'm like, if you'll ever be able to swallow, you can eat whatever you want. You can be as fat as you want.
right.
I'll give you
And
anything.
I'm always like, okay, I have like a cupboard of Jacob's junk that the other kids are allowed to eat.
That's cute. That's so cute.
But my house
Okay.
is littered with crumbs because I don't put him in a high chair. He's just so triggered by a high chair
Yeah.
that I just give him food and let him run around and follow him with a vacuum.
Oh man. So as far as like you're just working on oxygen at night and that's awesome that he can eat it all. I like that's so great for you.
Yeah, and so he gets virtual feeding therapy and
Okay.
speech virtual speech therapy because we don't have any services around
All right.
us.
How are those working? How do you like it doing it virtually?
I love it.
Yeah.
I think
It's nice not to do that.
he's in his own environment, so there's less stress right there, you know?
I think that's true. I kind of go back and forth because we have therapists who come to the house and then we have therapists we go and see. And I'm
Mm,
like this with it. I can't decide. I mean, she's older too.
yeah.
So I don't know. I can't quite decide. We haven't had any virtual appointments, but if if the respiratory season is as bad as it looks like it's starting to be, we may have
Uh-oh.
a virtual appointment.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to the winter.
I know. I don't. I keep trying to convince my husband to move me somewhere warm, but he just doesn't want
Uh,
to do
Um, but we just had his developmental assessment
it. Uh-huh.
and he had great scores. So we were really excited about that.
That's
Yeah.
good. That's
Um,
so good.
he's delayed in his speech, but that's it. And, you
Being good
know,
for that long in the NICU,
yeah,
like running
right.
around and crawling, that's awesome.
And all the oral aversion he had.
Yeah.
So, but we did have a hearing screening on Tuesday, and he failed his hearing screening.
So what are
So
they
that,
going to do about that?
I don't know. I went to our clinic and they looked in his ears to see if there's fluid, and they're like, "It looks great." Damn it.
So that's not helpful. That's not what you want to hear. You want to hear there's
That's not what I want to
something.
hear. And so they want to do a rescreening in 3 weeks. And I said, but that's 3 more weeks. And I know I'm going to have to probably take him up to primaries, and it takes 3 to 6 months to get an appointment. Can you just send the referral up to primaries?
Yeah, just do it now.
Yeah. And so she said she would, but uh, like, cool. One more thing.
I know. Gosh. Okay. Well, I have two more questions.
Okay.
I want to ask, and this has been super fun. We've gone a really long time, but it's because I really enjoy talking to you. I actually really enjoy talking to everybody. It's you guys have such amazing stories. I'm sitting here just thinking like over the journey that you've taken us on from, you know, infertility to these three kids and the NICU. It's
Sorry, it should have been
amazing.
a two-part series.
I know. No, it's amazing. No, everybody will love it. I love it. And that's what, this is about hearing. It's so cool. Like I'm just amazed at you and your strength for doing this. And I know that none of us like to hear that, but that we're amazing, but you are.
Oh,
And so one of my questions that I like to ask is, do you have any like this is super emotionally and physically draining to do this, to live this life. Like for the last, what are you talking about? 14 years, right, of your life that you've been going through some sort of emotional. Do you have any like self-care things that you have practiced while you're moving and doing all of do you have any like things that you know that you need in order to keep yourself sane?
audiobooks
Audiobook.
really have been, yeah, and especially with like um self-education and parenting and just like and adding to. So with my oldest son, we've struggled getting him services with our different moves and how long it takes to get into a place. And he's kind of on the bubble, right? Because he's more of an Asperger's
Okay.
diagnosis. I actually went through training, ABA therapy training. So as a technician, because I don't have my master's, so I can't
Yeah.
be a therapist, but um, like that's the level of commitment that I want to increase my knowledge and how to serve my children
Right.
is is through that. And I feel like as I'm gaining knowledge, I keep gaining light from God. And so that's my self-help is listening to books on tape. And I just recently listened to a really great one about, it's called Create Anyways by Gad is her last name. I forgot the first name. But anyways, she talks about the importance of continuing creating through motherhood and that's our gift is to create. And so she gives challenges every day to find ways to create, and that brings you become more godlike as you create, right? Because that's what he does, is he's the creator. And so um that has helped me, and I decided to start crafting again. I haven't done it in decades. Like,
How's it going?
I
What have you
don't know.
crafted?
Um, I painted some Christmas bells. I have some kind of thought or
Perfect.
something in my mind, but it was something for myself, right? Like I'm
Did you
gonna
craft a lot before you started
a
having
little
kids?
bit, yeah, sure, when I was younger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So,
think it's important to find those things that you used to love because I think
right.
you can become a walking, like, I become a walking spit rag. Like, we just,
A vomit rag.
that's all I do is I like, yeah, I'm a rag for Millie Spit and I take her and I'm a taxi to the, and you do have to find the things like, what did I used to do? What did I used to think about? So I love that. So crafting and audiobooks. Do you listen to only motivational and like
I
education,
know.
or do you listen to, you have some other fun ones too?
I like historical fiction.
Okay, fun. Me too. I
Yeah.
love, I
And
love that.
that's kind of my niche. I don't really like mystical, but but that's a huge part of my life with my boys too, is reading.
Yeah.
So um always having I read to my baby like two 2 hours a day, I swear.
Oh, good. That's
But
perfect.
it's what it helps him the most with speech and connection, and that's what he wants to do. So I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And then my time I spend with my middle child is dad takes the baby and tries to put the baby down to bed while I read with my middle child. And that's my connection time. And that's what I really wanted to focus on is I want to connect with you in a valuable way, like that something we can enjoy together and that's going to improve you and me. So
Yeah.
so reading with my boys is something I really like to do. And I like to do the different voices and make it theatrical. And so it's pretty fun.
Oh, fun. You should do a story time. You should have to like record a story time for us so we can all.
Sure.
You should. We really would love that. Okay, so my last question is just always what I ask. Like, first of all, I have to say thank you. You're inspiring, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. It's just
Oh,
wonderful.
you're so welcome. Thank you so much.
And so my last thing is if you're talking to women that are 2 years ago or 3 years ago or 12 years ago, or just even yourself, like what's the biggest advice you would give to just anybody out there who's facing something similar?
Um, love where you are. It's huge. Like and love your child where they are. That's a big thing and a hard thing to learn because the first part with my oldest, it was I was comparing, how to be a better mother through comparison. And God had to teach me just I love you here and you need to love him here too. And so that's my advice. Love where you are and where they are.
That's perfect advice. Perfect. Thank you so much. This was just amazing. I'm so glad that we know each other. And I just really appreciate it. But that advice, love where you are and love where your child is and be there. Like in that moment, I think that that is something that most of us have to face at some point in this journey. Face it sooner.
Right? And really that's from that point you can grow more.
You can.
It,
You can still
it,
push.
yeah, exactly. For
It's just,
sure.
yeah. So, oh gosh, Vanessa, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so
Anytime.
much. Yeah.
When
Well, if you
when I
think of,
don't have an appointment.
I know I'm like gotta run out the door in about 2 minutes, so I'm gonna wrap up. But I just really
Okay.
appreciate you. Thank you so much for telling us all of your story, and let me like keep on the group so I can hear about Jacob and his triumphs and his like. I'm ready for him to get off oxygen, so
Well,
I'm rooting for
right.
you. It's the best thing. I remember when the oxygen went away. It is like my favorite moment. So
Oh, I know. I'd be so happy, but they want me to keep everything here through the winter just in case it gets
I
sick.
still have it. I still have oxygen tanks, and we haven't used them for
Oh, geez.
compressor. Yeah, in case if she gets sick.
That's great. That's still good. I think that's great to keep as a reassurance. So
Yeah.
I will let you go, but
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a good day.
Okay. Bye.
Okay.